Hello. We're here live on a Monday. Last time I think it was a Friday. So yeah, we're switching it up. It's nice. If you're watching this after the live, probably good to scroll through a couple minutes as we dive into some topics. As usual, I do have some core topics to cover. And we're also opening it for Q&A. If you've been in the last 3 or 4 lives, we've gone 2 to 3 hours of Q&A and comments and just going with the flow of what arises. And tonight we'll likely do the same. I don't know if we'll go 3 hours, but we'll dive into what's relevant. I did notice that I was actually working on a post, on a written post in regards to the psychedelic topic, because the topic I had posted on marijuana and its connections to many things was getting some traction again, and then it looked like it went semi-viral just before this, over the past hour or so. So it's just funny that I was writing on the whole topic of psychedelics today. That's not finished yet. It may take me a little while, but just as a building from the marijuana topic that is shared. And then, just an hour ago, it seemed that somebody with a fairly big following, I think her name or his name is the Hood Healer, so shout outs to them, shared out the post, and it seems to be popping up right now. So it's all nice that we're here tonight, because I'm going to talk about just what I've been writing in regards to the psychedelic topic. I don't want to spend too much time on it, because it really doesn't matter, as long as we know the route that we take from here, from this moment, and that we recognize that no matter where we've come from, no matter what tools we've engaged in, no matter what we have done, good, bad, or ugly, there's always opportunity for healing. There's always opportunity for just a recognition of what is actually real, what is the truth, what is reality, versus what do we think is real? What are we imagining? What are we getting caught up in that seems to be real, etc. So say hello if you're here in the comments, and we'll dive in. Again, if there's questions, we can just get into them. I will just go ahead and start with this topic on the psychedelic realm. And I guess when it comes to looking at the topic of psychedelics, we can actually batch in a lot of similar tools. We can batch in tools that kind of connect in the same way of seeking for something external, seeking for a God external, seeking for bliss external, seeking for love external, seeking for something that will relieve us of what we are presently facing. So the majority on the planet, we've grown up in this earthly plane that is quite distorted in regards to where it lines up with eternal co-creation, like how other planets are, how the other universes are. We've really descended down into the depths. So we could say that the majority of us have grown up and experienced a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse, a lot of neglect, a lot of inability to know how to deal with pain and suffering, maybe an interesting relationship with pleasure and pain. So because of the amalgamation of all the things that we have had to face in this life, it is quite common and quite natural that there's going to be a desire to relieve that pain, to find relief from the dis-ease, to find relief from the depth of feeling of separation from source, feeling that love is in some other place but here, and in some other person but here, or in some other realm but here. And so when there's an inclination where this kind of pain or this suffering has gotten to a point where it's so strong, it seems that especially the Western world, or the Westernized world, which is the majority of us at this point, there is a call into something beyond. So alcohol could be maybe an initial gateway with that, where the alcohol is used to essentially create a different experience than what's being experienced now. And of course, there can be a balance with any of these tools, in the sense that as we realize the nature of who we are and where love actually comes from, like the example I've commonly used, where if we seek out love externally and we seek out the source of love externally as we go about our journey, it's very similar to as if the sun was shining its light on the earth and then looking at the earth and seeing all this light and saying, oh, I wonder where this light is coming from. Right? Just think into that for a moment, just that example. If the sun somehow, had this thought process, where it's perceiving the light that's on the earth, and it's questioning, well, where is this light coming from? So it goes off seeking to find this light. Where is the source of this light? It's so silly. It gives a little chuckle because it sounds so blasphemous, and of course, in that blasphemy, we can also come to recognize how silly it is for us, the source of love, to be out seeking for love in all of the images and the projected ideas of what God is. Because essentially, when we're seeking love in food, sex, relationships, achievements, all of the objects of existence, we're essentially coming to some sort of illusion that God is external, that we are seeking God in all of these things, and we are making a God out of people, places, things, foods, sex, psychedelics, experiences, right? All things in which can be objectified. In a sense, all things can be observed, all things observable. So this example I like because it comes back to a very clear thing always, that at any point in which we are looking to change the experience in the moment in which is happening right now, and in this case, when we're speaking to the notion of psychedelics, the psychedelics give some sort of promise, whether we've read it in a book, whether we had just a thought idea, whether somebody told us, whether some inclination of something, whether it's tapping into a past life or something like this, where we use them then and now we're here and we want to use them again. Well, there's this natural inclination that the psychedelic in some way is going to elevate the current experience. Now, often people can rationalize and justify in every which way as to why maybe using psychedelics is the expression of their joy, or is, a devotional, intentional practice that they don't really need. And I always would just pose the question, and this is a question that we have to pose for ourselves, and I know I did often whenever I was in the depth of that phase, was, well, if that was really true, if we were truly in the depth of our own joy and peacefulness that we are saying we are, then would there really be the desire to engage in said tool? Would that really even arise? And it's the same thing we speak to about food. Often when we're in an amazing social experience, or we're playing a sport, or we're really engaged in something, the ideas of hunger and food and thirst and all these things is just not there. It's dissolved. And this is, of course, why when we're walking the path of fasting or breatharianism or pranic living, there's a natural intention that comes clear where we recognize that the creative energy has to be moving. There has to be an ongoing experience of presence for there to be an opportunity to not go back into the food and the drinking, right? And then from that vantage point, we see that all food and drinking really at the core is emotionally based, right? And then as we're coming out of the need for nutrients and all of that, it's a long journey and it's not something that needs to be rushed. But coming back to the topic of psychedelics, it's no different. If we are really in the space of peace and joyfulness as we maybe think we are, then naturally there wouldn't be a desire to go into any particular psychedelic experience because, well, you're already there. And so people will get into the rationalization game and the justification game with that a lot. And so I'm not here to convince anyone of anything, but what I'm going to point to when we're speaking to the notion of utilizing anything external, there's quite a we could say a level of degree, and varying degrees of what we could say is an energetic exchange that it occurs with anything that we interact with. So when we look at our experience of nourishment, for instance, we could say that the densest form of nourishment is ultimately what's going to tax the body the most, and it's going to create a certain level of energetic exchange or a debt that essentially will be paid, and that will be paid through the body having to deal with it, and all the layers of the body, right? Physical, mental, emotional, and we could just say spiritual for now, but there are many more bodies than that. And so when we look at something like, let's say, breath, breath is inherent to this body. It's a natural process of this body. It's actually the one thing that if we go without it for the shortest period of time, we're going to perish. So we can look at that and say, okay, well, this is a very light form of nourishment, and actually a very important form of nourishment, much more important than food consumption, for instance. And thus, in that case, the scale of the degree of energetic exchange or taxing on the body is far less, because it's actually much more valuable to us. So the things that are far more value to us are not here to take away from us, right? We've grown up in a world where there is this no pain, no gain type mindset, a drama. Relationships should have drama, or there's no pain, no gain in the idea of achievements and accomplishments, and we have to sacrifice things to move ahead. And it's all of this idea that there is always these debts we have to pay to experience joyfulness and balance and peacefulness and health and vitality. But this is untrue, because the things that are most valuable to us do not require that level of pain and suffering and all that. Of course, if we've gone 20 years as a mouth breather and then we have to change into doing nose breathing and changing the patterns of breath, it may cause some pain, but this is the pendulum that we have created. And even going beyond that, the most fundamental form of sustenance is actually the very essence of being, the essence of pure being, pure awareness, pure consciousness. And it's not really awareness. That's just another figment of mind, but we can just use that term for now. But the essence of pure being is just our pure existence. And this is why, it is accounted that, many yogis at times would go breathless. You'd find yogis who do not even need to breathe in a certain sense for periods of time, because they've connected to the primal source of energy and sustenance, which is source, God's source itself. So there are many layers to this, and many layers to the exchange that ultimately occurs. But when we focus upon the forms of sustenance, which is basically light, sound, vibration, and then breath as an expression from that, we see that these forms of sustenance do not require that debt to be paid. There is no real exchange, a very little exchange that has to occur, and thus we're not. It's not a zero-sum game. It's a win-win-win. Everything is constantly building. It's an eternal spiral, an eternal, infinite Christic spiral that continues to build exponentially upon itself. So now, when we get into, let's say, the earthly realm. We could say food, for instance. If we're nourishing through food, well, there's even a full scale with the food. If we're eating, say, fruits and high water content foods, well, the exchange of energy is not going to be that strong. We're going to have to digest it. So yes, we're going to have to expend some energy on that. But it's much different than, saying, eating a huge cheeseburger, which is going to take, upwards a day, maybe into 3 days for that to digest, and some of that not even really even exiting the body. So the taxing of that on the food scale is quite vast. And so when we're in the earthly plane, we have to recognize that naturally all of the tools in which we can interact with are going to have many different levels of potential energy exchange. So when we're looking at psychedelics, for instance, this is an interesting one, because on a certain level we can use it in a way that is not psychedelic. There's ways in which we can use certain psychedelic plants in which are not psychedelic, and there are benefits that can be had with that. And I'm not a full-on advocate, but I do see the benefits in things where people are experiencing, very intense ailments or sicknesses or diseases, where things like THC oil or, various other products can potentially provide some balance. Although I know of way better ways and routes that we can go with that, and we just named some of them, which is breath work and getting into other cleansing protocols and things like this. However, I do see it that there can be a place for that. Now, when we're looking at the utilization of these various tools in the form of their psychedelic properties, well, we have to get into there's a few different discussions that we have to get to, because often in the New Age culture, most will point to the past, the shamans of the past, the ancients of the past, the religious scriptures of the past, where there will be an explanation in those scriptures or those teachings that psychedelics was commonly used as a means to open the doorway into higher consciousness. What the majority, even in the spiritual scene, do not have an awareness of or an understanding of, because it's not widely known, is that even within all of these various traditions, we find many different and very intense levels of distortion within these teachings. And why is that? Well, firstly, the histories that we're speaking of when we look at some of these past histories is not even really that long compared to our 575 million year angelic human history that's been on this planet. So when we're speaking to a few thousand years, that's peanuts compared to what we really have access to in regards to understanding our true Earth history. So this is one discussion. The second piece is that there's a reason why we don't have access to that knowledge even in the spiritual world, is because the spiritual warfare on this planet has been there for a very long period of time, and thus because of that, the distortions that have come within all of these traditions and the blocking out of that extended Earth history has been done for a very specific and intentional reason. So when we're looking and, say, glorifying, maybe Egyptian culture or Aztec culture or whatever, all kinds of different cultures and teachings, it's true. There will be some great teachings and there's truth in everything if we have the eye to see. And yet at the same time, we are going to, be sprinkled with truth with a lot of other things in there that if we're not coming from a clear place of discernment, it's going to be very easy to get caught up in that and fall prey to those distortions. So when we're looking at the psychedelic conversation, this is one of the strongest ways, in my view, and there's many others that I would say are, viewing it similarly to me, in regards, especially in the New Age culture, where these distortions are focused. And the reason why they're primarily focused within the psychedelic realm is because in the psychedelic realm, this is where, it's like if we're a baby getting into a Ferrari, well, it's going to be quite difficult for us to really manage the intensity of that power, for one. We don't really have any experience. We don't really know what we're doing. So if a police officer was after us, let's say, it wouldn't be that hard for them to stop us because, we don't really know what we're doing. We're a little child. So this is how I view the psychedelic realm for the most part, because often individuals that are coming into this are quite, let's say, many of us could be ascended masters, many of us coming back here many, many times, but the intensity and degree of the lack of remembrance on this planet when we come in is quite strong. So it doesn't matter who we are still going to come in and act like children to a certain degree. And on top of that, we're coming in or experiencing in this lifetime much trauma and conditioning and distortions that cause us to not have maybe the same discernment as we once did. And so as we explore and go into some of these tools, we are exploring a very intense level of uncharted territory. And so the question lies here, if we're already having some difficulty, let's say, challenge in our earthly life, our earthly human life, and now we're going to go into a realm that's far vaster than this, the stakes much higher than this, and we think somehow we're going to navigate that, maybe better than how we're navigating it here, or how, we're going to be able to handle that type of energy. I've been through that delusion. I've had that level of ignorance or lack of humility, and I've paid the price for it. And so it's a question for each of us, if that is of interest. And I feel the majority watching this maybe beyond this, so it may be just a reiteration. But as I said, earlier, this can connect to a variety of different tools, and it's pretty much coming back to the common theme of, we could say, like the bliss chasing. Right? What is bliss chasing? Well, it's essentially the underlying intention that looks to create an experience outside of this natural experience, this natural moment right here, that promises something that in some way is better than what's right here. You see? So often when we're in that sort of mode, there's a desire for speed and efficiency. So that's going to be done maybe through the psychedelics. That's going to be done maybe through very intensive, fast breath work. That could be done through, some sort of desire to channel or, bring in some energy, to create an altered reality or altered experience. There could be many others, but some of those are, I'd say, the most common. And, in some ways, we could look to all forms of addiction. Even some basic meditations or going to food could be this, right? This is why silent practices of meditation, dry fasting, a less is more attitude with life, really focusing on the subtle and the mundane things and the basic things rather than a need to create this constant movie drama within our life experience. This is why those fundamentally have always been the most constant and consistent practices of all times. And also we could batch in there just the golden rule. I've spoken to this often, the teaching of the Golden Rule is both the supreme teaching and the most basic level teaching in all traditions, because it's the most basic level teaching because it's the most accessible, in the sense that if we understand, oh, I need to treat this person how I want to be treated, the smallest of a child could understand that teaching and would naturally, if they were continually reminded, would look to continue to practice this. It's the supreme teaching because essentially what the Golden Rule is saying is that there is no other. What I perceive as the other is just a figment of the mind. It is actually just source, and I am source, and everything is source. So what I'm perceiving all around me is the nature of source, and thus there's nothing other to do than to treat everything as if it was myself. It is myself. So these timeless teachings, the teachings in which will never change, they will never get better or worse, they will never provide anything more or less than what they've always provided for, this is really where all spiritual paths will lead to. We'll go through the roundabout of looking for this technique and that technique, this crystal packet and this shaman and this next best retreat or this next strain of marijuana, I guess, the Frankenstein strains. There's this endless seeking for a better, more expanded, more advanced process. And this is not to diminish the reality of how advanced and complex this universe is. However, the fundamentals will always be realities. They will always be there. They will always be what we come back to. And this is why, at least in my experience, the best teachings, the best tools, the best practices, and the best is still relative, but there is some sort of objectivity with this, they will be the eternal teachings, meaning, and they will also be descriptions of reality. So what I mean by this is, the Golden Rule, to treat another as you desire to be treated, is both a practice and a description of reality. So let me know in the comments if that makes sense to you. It's similar to if we read, say a sutra, like a yogic sutra, or a really profound writing from some particular being. Sometimes you can feel that when you read certain writings from certain people. It's like you're feeling a transmission of energy. It's describing an aspect of reality, but there's also a practice found within it. These, in my opinion, are the best practices because it's really the nature of existence and reality. If we're constantly separating our life into a bunch of scheduled out practices, tools, all these things, we're basically treating our experience of life as a means to an end, right? And this is often where seekers get caught up in their path, where there's this never-ending blocking of everything. It's like everything's a means to an end. How do I get to this? How do I use this to get to that? How do I do this to get to here? And there is a reality and a practicality to that, though it can very quickly be the default because we are often, in our world, more left-brained. We're more like in that mode. So the practice of coming into communion, where we are recognizing that the best practices are actually a part of ourselves. They are an aspect of our being, not something separate that we're using. This is where we experience communion with our path. This is where we experience communion with and a clear discernment with what is true. You see? So there has to be an ongoing, perpetual self-audit, essentially. An audit, is not the best term, but it kind of is that. It's really just being honest with ourselves about how we are truly treating any particular path or tool. And I know in my experience with psychedelics, and I see this with 99% of people, the psychedelics are a means to an end, and if anything that's a means to an end inevitably becomes an addiction, because it does provide a result, but unconsciously or unconsciously there's a dependency with that result, and because there is an infinite level of the results that we can achieve, then one experience leads to another experience and leads to another experience, leads to another experience, in the sense that they always just end up seemingly becoming better and better. It's like, oh, that was the best meditation ever. Oh, that was the best psychedelic trip ever. It doesn't end. And the trap with that is that because it doesn't end, it entraps one in the identification, believing now that this tool is now a part of the consciousness, right? And so when we look at a plant as a consciousness, we have to understand that plants okay, if they have a certain consciousness and they become a part of your consciousness, well, no wonder it's going to be so difficult for one to take a break from any one of these plants, because, of course, in the realm that we exist in, there's a lot of parasitic and almost vampiric type of energy, and that energy manifests within all spectrums of consciousness. And so when we're speaking to the dynamics of particular plants, some of these plants, if not all of them, in some way are compromised. And going back to the original topic about New Age culture and our history, the higher beings that are extremely smart, because they've somehow governed this planet for a very long time, they are keenly aware of the reality of what we're speaking about here in regards to the ability to manipulate the consciousness of a plant. If that is possible and if that is done, then all beings that are associated with that frequency and thus consuming that frequency, merging with that frequency, well, they will be a part of that control network, essentially. They will be a part of that matrix that is essentially using that energy as food. Now, that's going to be different degrees for different people, right? I know people personally that I view to be, deeply loving and well-intentioned and all of this, that are using various plants, and their life may still be okay on some level in some ways, but then there could be other ways where they're facing much challenge. And in my experience, and just of myself, and then of course through that knowing, in observing friends, strangers, others who may be using some of these tools, it's quite obvious for me usually to be able to tell how that is affecting them, right? How it's affecting, usually it's affecting in a lot of highs and lows, and inability to really kind of get a grip on that intense, up and down, experience. And, this is just a product essentially from the manipulation that occurs on the chakra and the energetic level. And we've spoken about the pendulum, right? That was what we opened with today, right? We've spoken about this pendulum and the idea that the more dense of a tool, or the more a specific tool from the external shifts our consciousness, then there is a pendulum that's being pushed, and there will be an energetic exchange that naturally will occur with that. And so as long as we're clear about this, then my I guess recommendation, or I guess the reflection would be is, we have to take responsibility completely for that. And the paradox is that if we take responsibility for that completely, we'll see that we may not want to ride that roller coaster and that pendulum so much anymore. They may not be interested in the real intense, crazy swings that come with the interaction in this way. So this is a lot. I just went on for a little while. I'm not keeping up with the comments, so I'm just going to scroll back and see what you guys are saying. And I missed quite a bit. And so if there's questions on this, or if you want me to dive deeper, I can, because I literally just hit like the tip of the iceberg in regards to this topic, and I'm attempting to wrap in the core of the essence of what I share, which is how we rest in the peace of ourselves and the natural essence of ourselves primarily. I don't want to spend too much time on all the other things, because then the mind, really gets into that. We start asking questions that, may not really make a difference. Right? This is open head center behavior. So let's go into it. I'm just gonna wave at people. Say hello if you're here, and if you're coming in late, maybe go back and just rewind, and we can talk about things. Just waving at everyone. Wow, there's a lot of people here. Hello. Like I said, I think that post is still going viral right now, so it's good timing that we did this. Being able to listen to you is a miracle. Oh, that's sweet. Calm in the storm. The mirror reflects your state. I'm not sure what that means. Well, I know what it means, but if you have a question or there's something you want me to expand on that. The best practices for me are the most basic, because they just remind me of what already is. Yeah, wow, it's beautiful. That's exactly it. With the energetic exchange and external, eternal frequencies, is just learning to generate it for ourselves from within. Yes, exactly. The nature of realizing ourselves as source is recognizing that we are eternity in space and time. Not the best way to put it, but it's like if we look at the anatomy of God, or the anatomy of the universe, that anatomy of the universe is held within the individual being, because we are that. So for us to realize the nature of that we are source, it's like source is not just like this primordial dot, right? Like, oh, that's the dot that we are. No, we are the dot, but we are also everything that comes from the dot and everything that's made up within the dot. We're the entire package. So if we look at something like Kaylonic science, for instance, Freedom Teachings, where we break down the structure of the universe, the structure of an energy body, the structure of our multidimensional anatomy, the structure of the God worlds, the structure of everything, we are coming into remembrance of our anatomy structure. We're coming into remembrance of who we actually are. So it's like if our hand was another universe, and we were learning for the first time like what this hand is, or we're starting to explore it and move it. We are exploring an aspect of ourselves now and realizing, oh, this hand is a part of me. That's what a child does. So as we are spiritual children, we are remembering, coming into knowing a realization that we are the eternal source, right? And this is ongoing for all of us, including myself, where we are eternally expanding into and embodying through, or down, or in, it's coming within us. It's not like we're ascending to some lofty place. The reality of who we actually are. So I'll give you an example. Often common practice, let's say with the psychedelics, or doing some sort of practice, you go into nature and you do them, and then all of a sudden you see like the forest, like you would see Avatar, in the Avatar movies, where there's fluorescent stuff, there's beings, there's the trees are talking to you, all of this. Well, like many of you, on my journey, as I have naturally come into myself and dropped a lot of those external forms of tools, then there's a slow building, natural building of the extrasensory and heightened perception, where that reality of maybe not all the visuals all the time, like you would in the psychedelic trips, but the perception, the ability to perceive and feel the trees, to feel that aliveness, that awakeness within the consciousness of the forest, where it does feel like you're in another realm, another portal. You're in an Avatar movie, right? And it's so, there's nothing you need to do. You just sit there and you're endlessly in a fun place. So it's so great. So this would be kind of an example of, as we're expanding what we know to be ourselves. So now, okay, the forest is yourself. So because the forest is yourself, you're getting to know the forest now. You're getting to know the elements. You're getting to know what's alive within you. So this is the eternal discovery. Right? This is what awakening is we are embodying the full expanded self, which is eternal. There's no rush to any place. It's an eternal process. So the whole we're going to 5D, we're ascending to some place. Yeah, we're going to be able to go to places, and many of us have already been to many of these places, but the first step is the remembrance that all of this is already you. So it's not about going to some place, just like it's not about needing to take, these psychedelics or whatever, and then you need to expand into something and now you're there. No, that's not it at all. It requires a deeper level of patience, so that we can slowly, over time, could take years, to develop the foundational frequency, so that we see, we actually see, and that sight again is a kind of essentially forever expanding, because we continue to sink into who we are. And so this is what I guess I perceive through that question. Again, I'm just gonna go back and see who's saying what and all that. And yeah, there's more questions. Just keep them coming, and I'll keep up to date with them as we go through. Do psychedelics open us to dark forces to enter our fields and body? Well, it certainly is used as a manipulation tool. I will say that it's used as for those types of beings. It's the easiest way for any sort of being to interact with you unknowingly. This is not just something to fear as much as it is to just recognize the common sense with that, right? When we're grounded in ourselves here, I mean, remember, this can happen at any time. It's not just when we take psychedelics, but as we awaken, as we come into clarity and consciousness of, again, what is our anatomy? If we know ourselves only to be this physical body, and we don't know, let's say we have another hand, or we have wings, or we have all these other things, then if someone took that away, or that ability away, you wouldn't even know that happened. So it doesn't even matter. So as we come into knowing who we are and expand the attention of who we are, then we come to know how we have to take care of that. All right? That's really the message. The entirety of the message is that if we're using all of these other tools that bring us to levels that we have no idea how to manage or even have been there before and what we're doing and all of this, well, it's natural that there is going to be, like carrying the soup plate and then you drop the soup and it's all over the floor because, how, what else do you think's going to happen, right? It comes down to the reality of this. If we still have not managed this life and this reality and this moment and this moment-to-moment experience, if we have not taken care of this, then what is going to be the difference if we go into some other realm? How is that going to be any better? How is that going to be any more improved than what we're dealing with right here and right now? So this is why, when it comes to the spiritual path, we got to drop a lot of the ideas and all the things and all the glamorous objects and all the stuff that promises some great bliss state or some never-ending like shaking orgasm or something like this. It's peace is really the way. Coming to a natural peacefulness, a natural ease, a feeling of groundedness. Now, understand, feeling grounded doesn't mean dense. Feeling grounded, in my view, is coming into an expanded embodiment and perception of the moment, where we feel centered, we feel balanced, we feel like we have a clear perception of the entirety of what is occurring within within this, whatever this is. That's what I view to be grounded. So thinking grounded feels dense or, these things, it's, I know at least on times in my own journey, the idea of groundedness actually brought up fear. It was like, it was better to be the lofty. It's better to go and the psychedelic trip and experience all the whatever. Because really, essentially, if we are to be grounded, the only way we're to be grounded, we have to go through the depth of what we're holding in the body. The pains, the traumas, the things that are there that essentially are there to be felt. That's the only way we really are able to sink then into the body, because we're sinking through. It's like, oh, there's some stuff there, so I'm gonna, come into it. So again, this isn't something that we go on the search party and we're looking for it endlessly. Oh, where's that trauma I gotta find next? That kind of thing. That can be just as much of an addiction. With staying vigilant and focused on the path is, such a beautiful thing. And at the same time, everything that we need to heal is right here. It's always right here. It's always coming up, available. Here it is. And it doesn't take long. Just close your eyes in a small meditation. Just sit with yourself, and you'll feel the energy. You may mistaken some emotion for hunger. I did that today. It's like, oh, maybe I'll have some dates, that kind of thing, right? So yeah, hope that makes sense. Thank you for sharing. Yep. Talked about long-term effects of marijuana in your past, wondering or finding balance after long-term use. On finding, oh yeah, my experience is more peaceful than ever. Often it's so funny. I've gotten into this recently. Obviously, when you haven't seen someone in a while, or you talk, people say, "How are you? How are you doing?" And most of the time, I don't know what else to say but great. It's like great. It's nice. It's great. It's such a funny question, I find. How are you doing? I'm great. I don't know. I was like, it is just great. So it's just, it's a funny thing. But of course, of course, everything can be healed. We can come to balance. We can get to where we need to go because we're already there. It's just, are we willing to face and take responsibility for what we've done? That's all. It's not like it's not like I'm promising you the promised land. I'm saying just recognize that you have to feel everything where you're at now. So whatever you're feeling, however your state is, whatever your experience is, whatever you're going through, that's what you need. That's what's there for you. That's God. That's source. That's what you've been looking for. It's actually with you right now. It's right where you are. Right? There's no place to go. There's no other place to be. There's not something you need to absolutely do. There's things that can be done. There's things that you may feel called to do. There's things that you may naturally find a joyful resonance to and with. The reality is, it's all right there with you already. The silence is there. The peace is there. The pain is there. The guidance is there. The teachings are there. The tools are there. Everything. It's all there. That make sense? What's the difference between spiritual bypassing and generating positive energy within? What's the difference between spiritual bypassing and generating positive energy within? Well, look at it this way. The guilt, the shame, the pain is the same energy that makes up the joy, the love, the pleasure. It's all one energy. So just meditate on that. Experience that. Focus on that. This is essentially what the old teachings of inner alchemy pointed to. We alchemize the lead into gold. We understand that everything that we desire comes from everything that we think we don't desire. And how many times has our life shown us that? Is life like a giant video game? Feels that way. I'm so grateful to have found your page. Oh, that's awesome. This moment is the only one. Do you notice that when an epiphany comes, there's often awareness of how it could be embodied, always like a testing of the epiphany in the physical realm? Yeah, like maybe an experience that comes with that, or, I mean, often if you're having an epiphany, it's already being embodied. That's why it's there. It's like when you have a question, you also have the answer, because it's just one side of the same coin. It wouldn't come without the answer, you know? So it's the same way. It's like, okay, if you're experiencing pain, it means the healing is also there, right? If you're experiencing a challenge, it means the lesson is all, you know, we know this. It's everything comes together. It's all whole. So if we choose to only see one side of it, you know, or get caught in one side, if we get caught in anything, it's not just one side, just get caught in anything, meaning the mind grabs a hold of it and tries to make something out of it. A part of what I was writing today, actually, in regards to the psychedelic topic, which can be applied to anything in the path, but you know, it's like the topic of synchronicity. Often, if we have any particular ideas about anything, if we are synchronicity hunters, you know, we're looking for the next synchronicity or the message, we will filter that symbol through the ideas that we're holding about it, or the expectations that are had. And thus, because of that, we may not actually get the real message that's there. We may construe it. We may kind of manipulate it a little bit. So it's a practice. It's not like this absolute thing we got to be afraid now. But it's just recognizing, like, the more we're not thinking anything about anything, right? Like, if we're not thinking... the master soccer player doesn't think about how good he is at soccer. It doesn't think about what he has to do. He just goes and does it, and that's why he's so good, or she's so good. Likewise with the synchronicity, if there's constant thinking about the symbols or what's happening or the messages, the reasons, why is that there, what's the message for me, this, then naturally that you know, it shows the lack of maturity in that case, you know. So it's not to fault ourselves for that. It's just to bring awareness to see, oh, well, what if I don't pay so much attention to that? Or what if I take more, you know, of a balanced approach with how I'm perceiving, you know, what's arising or whatever. But yeah, I'll post about that in the next little while. So hello to everyone else who's here. Say I love here. I just tuned in wanting to see how you're doing. That's great. Yep. Oh my god, yeah, I think it's the response and the physical. Got it. Yep. There's a question. Yeah. So yeah, if there's other questions, just keep going. If you're coming in later, I mean, I did cover the psychedelic topic. I'm gonna make a more expanded post about it, probably just to like wrap up the topic for now, or at least have a main reference point. I mean, I have videos on my YouTube you can go watch about it that explain it more. You know, for those that are still like engaging, and I find obviously those who are still engaging it are the ones who have the most questions about it, because the mind is trying to find endless ways to continue. And that's fine, you know, just like any habit or anything that we, you know, may feel like we are ready to drop. but we're not so ready, or the mind's not ready, or there's an addiction tendency, that's when we'll find ourselves in a lot of questioning. A lot of, oh, I need to, I don't know, so let me ask and get sure. So that's fine. I'm willing to answer the questions. At the same time, we can also see the attempts of the mind, right, to kind of try and put the brakes on. Oh, I don't know if I can go that way. I don't know if I want to do that. And then the question arises, well, is that you speaking? Is that you who's talking? Or is that something else? And when we're speaking to the psychedelic space, again, as we spoke about, the plant's subconsciousness. So if the plant is deeply unraveled within you, or the other friends that come along with that, oftentimes, just like when we're looking to dissolve from food addictions, we have parasites and worms speaking to us through our gut. Well, again, is this really you speaking? Is it really you who needs that craving, to feel nourished? Oh, I just wanted to nourish myself because my body wanted it. Well, was that really your body that wanted that? This is the question. So again, we're not fault finding ourselves. We're just being honest. And if we can be honest with ourselves, then we will feel the pain of the dishonesty, and then we'll move through it. It's really beautiful. How can the answer be in the question? Well, I would just give this practice. The next time you're starting to have questions about things, see if you can just sit with that question before maybe like going on Google or going to ask somebody or something like that. See if you just like meditate on it and see. It may take a while. Some may be instant. Some may take whatever. Just if we can just sync with that and listen and see. Oh, well, what do we think? Like what arises when that question arises? I would say that probably be a good practice. To be learning to expand dimensionally and keep the mind cosmic is where the room for growth is, but I hear you about knowing love is within, keeping the mind cosmic. Yeah, well, it's like that quote I posted the other day. It was in those 4 little quotes with the reflections, and the one quote was from Bodhidharma, who said, "There's no inside, outside, or middle." So I would actually point to that reflection. That's a really nice one. There's no inside, outside, or middle, and it's like, okay, well, what is there? Where am I in all of that? Right? Because you may think initially, oh, I'm the outside. Then you think, oh, I'm the inside. Then you're like, oh, I'm the middle. That's essentially the process. But I guess the 4th step we could say is maybe there is no point in where you are in that, and you're all of it. As much as you can still reside within the expression of individuality, which is very important. So yeah, I'm gonna go up and see if I missed any questions on anything. But if there's anything else or any other topics that you want me to cover right now, I can. And I'd also recommend to go back and watch the past 4 lives that we've done. I believe, they're all on Instagram, but they're also on YouTube. I was going to put them on Spotify's audios too, but they have a lot of great stuff. I recognize they're long and not organized, so it's up to you if you really want to go through it. But most of them have some sort of timestamps. I'm just going to go back and see any other questions here. The mirror, so I'm going to go back to this question or this statement. The mirror reflects your inner state. So again, that's a recommendation for everyone to just meditate on that quote. There's no inside, outside, or middle. Just like there's the idea of like reflection and projection, like there's a mirror and you're projecting into your hologram. There's a reality to that, and then there's also a reality where that is not necessarily what's happening. So it's nice to meditate on all the perspectives that come with that, because again, when we're constantly in this mode of kind of thinking, oh, everything I perceive is my projection, there's a beauty of self-responsibility with that. Then there also can be another way for the mind to really get on that, and kind of hold on to those things. And it can kind of get challenging, actually, when that's the case, especially in this realm, because we're co-creating reality. We're all in it together. We're all sharing, these things. So there is a balance between the other and this self, the apparent other, the parent self here, and then the middle ground, the third energy that's created within a relationship and an interaction. And since everything is relationship management, everything we do is relationships, it can be applicable to everything. Thank you for your YouTube meditations. Amazing. Yeah, I believe it was you just commented recently. I think it was you, or maybe it was someone else. Someone was saying that they were quite profound. Let me know if you guys would enjoy this. I've been actually percolating on it. I'm looking at creating another course. There's 3 courses. Well, the third one's going to be up. There's 2 more that I'm percolating, but one of them is really me coming back to where all of this started, because where I started with all of this, well, after personal training and martial arts teaching and all that, was teaching meditation almost a decade ago. And I feel like the meditations that are on YouTube are some of the best that I've come across, and things that I would directly want to practice myself. That's why I put them out there. So what I'm looking to do is putting together like an ultimate meditation course. I don't think it would be really a course. It's just going to be a package of all the core elements of the meditation process that I have done and that I view to be quite nice, and then potentially, well, definitely pointers to other forms and other teachers that I've come across that I view have really solid meditations as well. So if that's of interest, let me know or send me a DM, because I'm gonna add that one in. Well, it's gonna already happen, but it's nice to hear if other people are actually wanting that. And then from there, I actually was feeling to make them in both video and audio, like a mini app or something where they all can be there, and they can be accessed, because there's so many different types of meditations out there, and there are some that are definitely better than others, and then there are some that are definitely better for certain circumstances than others, and certain types of energies or people. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. It's been on my radar for a little while, but I may just do a live meditation on Wednesday. I'm just finding the live stuff for meditations isn't always the best, because you just do meditation when you can, as much as you can. So if you have access to the videos or the audio, then you just do them instead of having to tune in. But maybe we'll do on Wednesday night. Knowledge and information can be addictive and synonymous with belonging to particular spiritual communities instead of just being spiritual. That's a good point. Yeah, for sure. That's a really nice point. Yes. Okay. Well, that sounds good. Yeah, it's I was speaking to a friend recently. I don't know if Josh is still here, but I think I was speaking to Josh about Lao Tzu, and Lao Tzu has always been a reference for me in his writings, and some people have a hard time with Lao Tzu because it is one of those kind of again, like I mentioned earlier in this live today, one of the forms of teaching that expresses a practice and a description of reality almost simultaneously. It's almost like reading it is a practice, and often with these types of beings, you can't find a teaching. You cannot pinpoint a core teaching. And I experience this with myself, and I'm sure people get confused with me because I talk about everything from like aliens to cleansing to meditation to this to that. Like this, it's everywhere, and I attempt to compartmentalize it in certain ways. But to be honest, it can be quite a challenge because it all overlaps. It's and from one day to the next, or from one person to the next, there may be a different recommendation. There may be a different perspective or something that comes up to be shared, and so yeah, like that's what I relate to with that comment that was just said about not having a dogma or some specific set teaching or specific set thing that you believe to be this absolute way. We obviously can reference certain things that we feel really hit the nail on the head, in comparison maybe to other things, but once again, as we start to dissolve into that space where there's no middle, there's no inside outside, that isness, that can't even really be described as isness, but you get what I'm saying. In that space, we can find every teaching that we would ever need in the right moment, in divine right timing, and from any particular person, not some spiritual teacher or this healer or this, that, or whatever, from anything and everything. And that's where then we've now become Google, the organic Google. Yep, that's it. So yeah, if you're coming in late, we went through some really good stuff. We covered the psychedelic topic, covered what the real it was everything that we could possibly talk about with that topic in this short period of time, and really point to what matters, which is the methods, the practices, the tools that stand the test of time. Think about it this way: what if you can't access your psychedelics and you need them? You know what I mean? Or you think you need them? Just like food, like I was talking about a food shortage. If you can fast, well, maybe you're going to be good. So it's always going back to what is going to stand the test of time. What will be there even when things block you from having it? What is always accessible? That's you. That's your own love. That's your own ability to uphold true principle, integrity and honesty and respect and dignity and reverence and love and compassion and kindness. It's the ability to embody that in which is inherent to you. This is why all of the authentic spiritual teachings will point to not external things that are needed, and if you don't have them, then you can't do the thing. No, they're always available. They're always accessible through your attention, through your thought, through your breath, through your awareness, through your energy movement, through your body, right? Through the elements, through the communion of your soul, your soul energy, your oversoul, your avatar, your rishi, through the entire cosmaya. Everything is accessible right here, right now, as you are. Don't need to be some special person. You don't need money. You don't need, be in some special place on the world. You don't need to be in a certain spiritual community. You don't need to have all the tools and all the things and all the stuff to make it all happen. No, it's not. It's not needed. It's not. It can be helpful, right? It can be a tool. It's like I'm wearing clothing right now. I'm not naked. Maybe I actually rather be naked because it's kind of warm. So, we can see how even the tools can be a little distracting. So it's it's kind of just a reminder that there's no excuse. There always can be. Put it this way: the practicing of the most advanced, supreme spiritual practices that are going to bring the most expansive and every adjective you can give in regards to knowing yourself are available. Just you and your naked self. They're right here. Just you got it. You got it. And we covered a lot of it today. We covered a lot of it, and I put it as much as I can out freely. And many others do. It's all over. Obviously, if you want some more guidance and some more time energy from me, then there's exchanges and things like this, which is natural in this time matrix that we're living in. But we are moving more and more into a time where less is more. We don't need to spend all this money and time and energy and all these things to become something that we already are. These are things that are already accessible. They are freely accessible. And so the more that individuals realize this, the more first that we stop wasting money on things that we don't need. We start investing that money into things that actually can be useful. And then we recognize that really our life here is to be in a creative, flowing play, so that we can express our joy. We can, continue to express our joy with other people and beings, where we're not needing to get things from each other. We can just express together and feel that nice energy flow and that gifting energy to each other. All of that. This is what occurs when beings and take responsibility, when we all take responsibility for our own journey. It's quite nice, I would say. So yeah, there doesn't seem to be any more questions, and I covered quite a few things. Let me see if there's anything else that we can explore that's relevant, because I may do another one of these on Wednesday, but I don't want to do too many of these. I'm going to focus on, I have quite a list of posts, long form written posts, as you guys have been seeing on my wall. And if you're just new here, I would, not before anything, but just take some time, go through the posts. There's quite a few posts. They may be confusing of how wide the topics are, because I do cover such a broad variety of things. But some of them may hit, some of them may not. You may find some gems in there. Same with YouTube. And yeah, that's a great recommendation, because there's a lot more coming from where and a lot of them have practices in there. So that's a bit of the challenge. I hope there's actually practicing of some of these things, because often people, if they just see it in a free Instagram post, a little practice, they'll be like, oh, it's, they don't see the value. And I understand that whole argument, whatever. But the reality is like, I put it out for a reason, because it's so simple. I don't need to create a course around it. Just do the damn simple practice. And if you do the practice, you do it consistently, oh man, like there's one practice down there. It's the meditation practice of the emotional energy healing process. It's called awareness technique. I mean, I do teach the whole course one-on-one, which I always recommend. But I've outlined the practice in a simple form, so we go into a lot more other pieces with that. But just the simple form, if you practice the steps, those 4 steps, on any of the energies you're feeling in your body, anything that feels troublesome to you, almost guaranteed you're going to feel better. You're going to feel good. You're going to feel great. You're going to alchemize that energy in a really beautiful way. And you're going to realize that you didn't need to do probably 99% of the things you thought you need to do to handle that. So that would be an example of something to go and just do it, just do it. There's also one practice I saw today. No, I didn't see it today. I got reminded of sharing this, and I'm going to share it in conjunction with a bunch of other simple meditations. And maybe it'll be in the meditation thing that I want to create, like I mentioned to you guys. And so just a note, if you haven't seen those 3 courses that are up on my website that have, purification, awakening abundance, and gift economy, money flows, and then the sacred sex proposed topics, they're not finished and recorded yet, go and look at that. So that's just a side note. When we're looking at these simple meditations, I was reminded today because I saw this beautiful little video of this man who was feeding water to an ant. You see these animal videos where there's a stray dog and they're giving water to the dog, or there's a squirrel, and I saw a squirrel one. I even saw a snake one, where the snake is dehydrated and they're giving water to it, and just such a beautiful display of compassion and empathy. But then I saw one now giving it to an ant. And it was so synchronistic because recently I've actually very much been in this consciousness of compassion with insects, and I'm doing my best. I mean, mosquitoes are a bit challenging, and if Josh is here, he would know. We were at his house in the forest, and there's a lot of mosquitoes, but I tried to swat them with compassion at least. However, when I was with him, actually, you saw our post at the falls. We were walking on a pathway. And I was in this consciousness where I was seeing all of these ant hills. There's all these ant hills everywhere. And that consciousness of compassion was arising here. And I was like, oh, this is such a beautiful meditation that we can do. Because I remember doing this many years ago, where when you're walking, it's as if you're kissing the ground with your feet. You're walking in such a gentle way. You're actually trying to miss stepping on the insects as much as you're still going to kill probably thousands, but you're bringing a certain level of compassion and understanding and awareness to even the most smallest of beings that you're affecting as you're walking through the forest or whatever. And it just, your heart just lights up. Like when I was doing that, I felt so good. I mean, we were in the water in the forest already, but it expanded and intensified that feeling of compassion, because we all know how good we feel when we give, and we feel that compassion in our heart. This is a very beautiful practice to experience. No different than if you're walking, say in a city path, and you just look to smile at every stranger that you can, not in a creepy way or in a forced way, but continuing to see how simple it can be. You don't need to go on some retreat in Bali to experience heart opener, you know what I mean, or fucking feeling compassionate in yourself. You just smile at a stranger, and you'll feel it right where you are. And this is kind of what I'm getting at with the entirety of the message that I've been sharing, is how simple this really can be, and how quickly realization happens. It's not quickly, it can happen at any moment, and then endlessly so, because we're practicing, again, the practices that are the descriptions of reality. To smile at a stranger or to be gentle around the ants is to recognize who you are. You are all of it. You are everything that's perceived. You are everything that moves. You are everything that is. So if that's the case, then we act that way. We live that way. And if we live that way, then we feel compassion and peace. So there's our retreat. There's our 10,000 books that we feel we got to read, or take all the fucking herbs and cleanse programs and all this stuff. We got to do all these things. No, it's not it. That's just a byproduct, and so it's important we remember that, because the byproduct of moving into things that we feel we have to do happens by way of us experiencing the simplicity of ourselves in that compassion and that peace. So as we experience more of it, we have even more clarity as to what tools are actually going to be helpful if there's actually a feeling of that requirement. And of course, less is more. It will continue to be less is more, because again, going back to the psychedelic thing, if we're already in the natural joyfulness and peacefulness and all of the above here and now already, we're not going to feel the need to go on some psychedelic trip. Why would we? It's happening right now. This is the lucid dream. You know, this is what we've been seeking. Right? And it's been right here all the whole time. So what we were seeking is like we're running around, like chasing, we're like looking. It goes back to the first example I gave today that I've said so many times. The sun that's observing the light on the earth and then going around looking for the light. You know, so where is this light on the earth? I wonder where it's coming from. But it's you. You know, it's what you are giving. You know, so the love we're seeking is what we are, and the more love we see around us is what we are. Right? So it's because we're seeing ourselves. So I hope this makes sense. I'm practicing being new every day. Ooh, wow, nice, Gary. That's a great practice. New every day, new every hour, new every minute, new every moment, new every breath. Constant newness. Smile bike rides. Yep, that's exactly what I've been doing too. You're the smile train. So, who else is here? I think I can see who's here. There's probably some new faces in here I haven't seen before. Hello. Because I wonder if that marijuana post just seemed to pop off today, man. And I posted that like months ago. Social media is interesting. Yeah. That was a really juicy part, that last part. I really like that part. Because, oh boy, it can be so simple. Like, it's like so simple. If we just practice, just do the work, you know, and keep coming back, keep being reminded of that, you know, that simplicity. That's all it comes down to. That's all it comes down to. Hello. Yeah, so, I mean, I'll check in again if there's anything more. I mean, obviously there's endless things I could speak about. I'm a triple air sign, and I'm also writing a lot, so a lot of things circulating. But at the same time, you know, just sit in the silence. If there are questions, then now would be the time. I think there was some unanswered questions I had up here. Maybe not. But yeah, just a reminder, new people coming in, go back into my old posts. Just read as many of my old posts you can if you're here and if you learn, you know, I'm not saying you're going to like everything. But there's so many great practices there. Okay, so can you talk about Kundalini epilepsy? Okay, I will. Andrew, I'll get to you. Hey, Sarah. Hopefully I think it's Sarah. Yeah. Can you talk about Kundalini epilepsy? So, kind of, I guess, synonymous term with Kundalini syndrome, where Kundalini is activated at a time where the body is not necessarily ready. That's probably not the best way, because it's like you're always ready. It's just what type of damage system, circuitry, is the Kundalini going to have to work through? That's really what we're looking at, right? So, another reason why I do not recommend psychedelics or really intense breath work is because you're going to work through circuitry in your body that is not maybe properly ready for that. And because there's a forcing of the energy, it will cause quite a number of things. One of the things that it can cause is this Kundalini, you know, epilepsy or Kundalini syndrome, which is essentially just very intense detox or awakening symptoms, energetic heightened symptoms that often will relate with a lot of the traditional mental health diagnosis people use. It'll look like that because there isn't a grounded foundation, there isn't proper guidance. again, the energies are very intense, so there's very extremes, highs and lows, ups and downs, all the things. So let's look at recommendations. Let's look at what this is. Let's look at how do we take care of this. Well, we have to come back to often if we can come back and source the intention by which we engage any particular practice that may have caused this. Often that will be the bliss chasing, right? The bliss chasing intention, which is coming from deep trauma and pain that looks to be escaped, and thus because of it, we engage in these practices. And then we get the result. We push the pendulum. Now the pendulum's coming back. So I hope we get this, so we understand what we're looking at. So if we can source that intention, we can bring a stop to that in the sense of not continuing that trend. This is why being honest with ourselves, what is really the intention we've carried that has caused this experience, that has caused this circumstance, that has caused this interaction now that's bringing suffering? Well, if we source the intention, if we come back, we're honest with ourselves, seeing, oh yeah, well I was acting with this desire, this intention, this energy, then we can source it back. Then we see, okay, well, bliss chasing is not the way. Well, what is the way? Well, it does feel like if I just experience, maybe I just go and sit on a lake, or I just meditate in silence. No technique, just sit in silence. Or, I'm just sitting with a family member, a young child, just watching them play. There's a deep sense of peacefulness, a naturalness that emerges with that. Okay, this feels a lot better than this bliss chasing, because every time I bliss chase, I come back and I pendulum, we see what happens. So, can we see where we're getting at? We can see that we're getting clearer as to what actually is desirable, what is actually real, what is true. This is what we focus on, and this is how we heal Kundalini, epilepsy, all the syndromes, whatever, and then all the mental health things, in conjunction with the things, again, because we went into it before. Golden rule, dry fasting, silent meditation, engaging in nature and elementals. There's others I can add into those four. Those four. So clear. It's emptying out so we can be full. Emptying out so we can experience love. Not in extreme ways. You don't need to be meditating 10 hours a day. You don't need to dry fast for 10 days. You don't need to, go around and just, feed all the homeless people in your city. It doesn't need to look like anything. However, those are the foundations by if we just even experience just a sliver of those for even just a little bit each day, we will see the benefits. We can probably add walks in there, going for walks, playing with some animals and some children can also be in there. Putting our hands and feet in the soil, tending to the garden, that could probably be put in there. There's a nice list right there. And like I said, pretty much all of those are free. They're all free. Why does the wisdom in other people surprise us sometimes? I don't know. Maybe we don't know what's possible. Maybe we're thinking things are limited, and not in a negative way, but we're just like, oh, wow, that's possible. Right? That's how I see it. Marijuana pose. Okay, the light brought me here. Nice. I've closed off my Kundalini whilst I address some childhood traumas. Yeah, well, I'd say you can't really close off your Kundalini because you have your Kundalini current, which is also called the Antakarana current, goes up to dimension 9. Then you have your Maharata current, goes up to dimension 12. Then you have a Kirashe current that goes to dimension 15. Then you have your Kundalini current that goes into the unmanifest fields. And these are all part of you. Now, most people have never activated beyond, most really don't even know the Kundalini is moving in some way, even if it's just subtle levels. And then the other three are have not been accessed by a lot of people. But it is on the planet right now, especially the Maharata current's already here, and they're all here. It's more so if we're actually actively engaging them, that's obviously different. Like you're saying, maybe not actively engaging the Kundalini, but it's always there. I mean, it's what gives life and rise to everything. So it's, in my view, it's best not to be manipulating, creating all these crazy energies with it. Just moving everything moving in a methodical pace and in a natural pace in the engagements with those energies. Would you like to discuss the marijuana post in real flow time. I haven't gotten to it. Would love to hear your truth. Well, we just covered like a good 30 to 40 minutes on that topic, but maybe I'll get into it again. But I would recommend to rewatch this. This will be posted, and then I'm gonna have some more posts to follow up on to go into like mushrooms and ayahuasca and stuff, because those are all bunched in the same grouping. There's not much of a difference with the effects of them. What moves like vortex? I don't know what that means. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, awesome. If you want to be clear, David, on that, maybe what moves like a vortex? Like a vortex? I don't know. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to touch too much more on the marijuana topic. I mean, the post covered the gist of it. Maybe the connections of where it's from. I mean, and people are going to endlessly debate that, so that's okay. But if we just look at the realities of what it does and how we experience it, it's just very clear. It's just very clear. Let's just put it this way, and I've said this a number of times in the previous lives. In my experience of learning from many who I view to be enlightened, or at a certain level of adepthood or mastery on this path, and I feel I've come across some of maybe those that are in such an intense field of energy living, and also the ones non-living, from the past. Absolutely none of them will recommend psychedelic use for spiritual growth. Maybe you're sick, or maybe if you're feeling a bit of anxiety or these things, people do it for all types of reasons. But if we're speaking strictly on spiritual growth and healing, it's not that they cannot support. This is not what I've said. It's just that it's not going to be a recommended tool when we take into account all of the other tools that are possible, all of the other things that we have access to, all of the wisdom that's available here and now. So let's just like get grounded and humble with that, and I'm, this is just me, but you're from my perspective, I don't think you can name a teacher on the planet right now, other than there's a lot that are unknown, that I probably haven't interacted with or learned from or explored their work in some way. Like I went really extreme with that, and none of them, there's absolutely none that are authentically enlightened. There are some that are on the brink, or have kind of come into initial stages maybe, or have had glimpses, but yeah, that's just such a common theme. Like we're speaking of like the real, like the real ones, So yeah, that's all I need. Because every one of my greatest teachers always told me, get away from that, from your crown up. Okay, perfect. I'll definitely connect to the replay. So many wisdom. Yeah, this is a great live. This is some really nice stuff. Really nice stuff. I mean, every live is always such a joy. I really enjoy these. Is anything else for today or tonight? I mean, I can go forever, but so many topics. Quite silent right now. Yeah, I feel quite nice. Kind of warm in this though. I'll go outside after this. But if you're just coming in, I mean, this will be on replay. You can rewatch all the topics. There's a lot of really juicy stuff that we covered today, and there has been a lot of juicy topics in the past lives. I would just spend time with that. Spend time with all the posts as much as you can if you're new, because I know there's quite a lot of new people today. Past week, wow, it's been nice. People sharing stuff. If you benefit from this, maybe share this as well, or tag some friends, because this topic, it's not like it's just a topic I know so well because I went so deep in it. But it's not a topic I like to really put too much energy in, and that's why we've gone into all the other beautiful practices and meditations and things that really will make the difference. And I am compassionate to the reality of why we use a lot of other tools and do a lot of other things to get to other places and to get into these bliss states and to have great experiences, etc. Because I also have done this too, and I maybe still do, on certain levels. But it's just recognizing that peace, natural state, peace, natural state. These are the things that stand the test of time. Stand the test of time. And what are the practices that bring that and help us remember that, or help us know that, or reveal that? That feeling of eternity, that feeling of knowing, clarity of knowing in ourselves, groundedness, while still be tapped into all the cosmic things. You ain't going to lose out on any of the cosmic knowings and downloads and realizations. Don't worry about it. Deeper the roots, the higher the tree. Remember that. Deeper the roots, higher the tree. So the more that we feel that sense of groundedness, the simple things, we're enjoying the mundane, we're willing to practice the most basic of practices, that will take us very far. That will do everything. And then all the complexity, all the advanced light body stuff, all the UFO knowledge and the Earth history and the advanced anatomy knowledge and understanding the anatomy of the planet and where you're going to go after here, where you've been, all that stuff, that will all come. All so naturally. It will come and you will just know it. It'll be like, oh, yep, I understand that now. Didn't understand it before when I was bliss chasing everywhere and trying to get somewhere and just like couldn't understand a damn thing about some of this advanced stuff. But now, all of a sudden. And I'm obviously speaking from my own experience, so maybe some can relate. Transmission is better than any subject. Aw, Trevesi, I was going to message you today, but I had a feeling we'd connect at some point either way. Happy you're here. Lisa, we are the love we seek. Put it simply. What a divinely aligned tune, and thank you for sharing so much juice. Oh, cool. I love juice. Just came into this live, so I'm not sure what you've already discussed. Can you discuss reincarnation and the afterlife? Okay. Oh, I guess I answered it. Reincarnation and the afterlife. Well, reincarnation is not a natural thing in the eternal universe, the eternal co-creation. It happens mainly on fallen planets or planets that have gone through distortions, and we exist in a planet that has heavy distortions, and one of which is the net field. And the net field is an energetic grid created by it's a crystalline, it's called the crystal diotic grid. I forget the exact term, but it's basically a grid of energy that was inorganically placed here by higher beings that creates a net field that causes us to reincarnate without remembrance of who we are and inability to access our true self. Well, we can, but it's more difficult. So reincarnation is a part of the distortion, and that's why those who come here often are not going to be getting out for a while until we come into a cycle like we're in now, which is giving us the keys to the kingdom, where we can access our remembrance and knowing and be able to direct our consciousness as we see fit with this body or without it. Because technically, death is not a natural thing either. We're not supposed to die. It's not a natural... It happens here and it happens in other planets, but within eternal co-creation, which is... It's like if you understand, like, this universe is in like a little box compared to the all, which is where the real stuff happens, if you want to put it that way. Even though there's so much beauty that's here too, it's just such a vast topic. It's hard to really even talk about in such a context like this. I would just recommend go read the book Voyages 2 or other related material. But yeah, so death and reincarnation are not really natural things. They're just things that we've gotten used to, because it's like people get used to sickness and disease here. People think it's natural to die at 100. It's natural to get sick. It's natural, people get cancer. These things. It's not natural. It's not. It's normal. It's not natural, and it's not. And that's a product of the distortion fields. So reincarnation in the afterlife. Well, because we have this net field, most of us, yes, are in this reincarnation process that keep coming back. And so now we're in this incarnational time where we're resolving, so many of the lifetimes, so many of the distortions, so that we can have access, and we already do have access to the eternal space. And in that, we can direct ourselves. We can take our body where we want to go. We can, travel up and down, left and right. Like we can go where we want to go in the universe, just like we pull up Google Maps and we travel somewhere. So this is what's happening now, is we're in this remembrance of how we're going to be able to do that. Some of us already do that if we project our consciousness into certain places, and at night or in the dream world this may happen, but it's just more of a conscious recollection of this, so that the death process, although people in these bodies may still die, but progressively less and less will that occur over time as we heal, and as we realize who we are and recognize that, oh well, if I can just dissolve this body and go somewhere else, or bilocate it somewhere else without dying, then obviously I'm going to choose that. So that takes a certain high level of healing, and I'm just sharing as a adventurer on that quest, just the same as you, though. Yeah. So afterlife is, well, what is it? Afterlife is just, it's a continuity. There's no afterlife. It's perpetual, eternal life. So if there's a death in the body, you're still there. It doesn't matter. It's like you wake up, if you ever died in a dream, it's no different. So you're there. You're perpetually there. You're never not going to be there. So it's recognizing that as you realize that and know that, then it's a process of just simply knowing how you're directing your consciousness. What is your path? What is your intention? Where would you like to go? And not everyone's going to have the cognition of that when they die. Not everyone's going to know that or have any idea about that. And they're still going to go where they need to go, because we're in a very different time now, where that reincarnation trap is less. It has less and less of a hold on this planet. Still there, but less and less of a hold. So the more we have done the healing work in preparation, then we either take our whole body with us and the body doesn't die, or the body dies and we go and we need to pack up the body later. There's different ways in which that can be done, but it's a quite advanced topic. Hope it makes sense though. Yeah, resonates. There you go. Dealing with what is here is also a huge key. Dealing with what is here is absolutely a key. It's really the only key, because what is here, as in just what's happening now, is all the messaging we need as to what what's our direction, what's our path, where we're headed, or how we'd like to navigate ourselves. So can we talk to someone that died and teach about the solution? That's a really interesting thing. I would do it. Just do it. Meditation, see how that works. They may have already come back, they may have not, they may be stuck. Who knows? And a lot of souls that are stuck. Alright, so yeah, that's cool. I would practice that if you like, haven't thought of that one. Well, I've thought of it, I haven't thought of doing it like these days. I've heard also about the moon not being for us or bad in a way that you don't. In a way, do you know anything about that? Yeah, that was probably the most. Well, now I guess since the marijuana post went viral, I think it seems like that one's taken the number one seat. But the moon post was the number one seat as far as interaction goes on my wall. So you can scroll back and read that. It's quite in depth. Nothing is good or bad. Nothing is absolutely this or that. It's all kind of some gray area. The moon is not natural to this planet. It's a synthetic moon. It's a piece of the blown up planet called Maldak, and it was placed here by Anunnaki beings to support in the manipulation of our sexual energy, emotional energy, the waters in our body. It's like a control base. And so there has been a lot of healing done though, with it and with the energies in our bodies and all of that. So we're far less affected by it. We can detach from it at any time. Just put the intention to be disconnected from the cycles of the moon and influence from the moon, all that. Don't be getting too intense with full moon, new moon rituals and a lot of that, because that's conscious or unconscious worship of the moon. Like it's some god or goddess. They call it the goddess, which is not true. The earth is the goddess. Not even a goddess. The earth is just female. So if we're looking at the masculine energy, of the sun or whatever, well, the earth is the female counterpart, not the moon. So that's a very clear distortion there. But but we don't need to be afraid of it. It's not controlling. It doesn't need to control us. It's there. It creates influence. There's other things going on with it, but like anything, it's whatever, you know. You are everything. Like, remember that. You are the source. You are this, you know, eternal being that has access and is everything. So that part of the moon is part of what you're seeing in your hologram. So it's to be compassionately loved, not worshipped, not given power over, you know, anything or what have you. It's not, you know, you're not acting a fool because of it, you know, that kind of thing. Like, it's recognizing your balance with it all. So the less we focus on it, like it has some, you know, it's so bad or it's so good, you know, that polarity game is what creates the trapping. It's what creates the creating a god or the creating of a devil out of something, you know. Anytime we're putting something as a pendulum on something on a pedestal, there's something else that's going to be lesser. So there's this constant kind of flow that happens there that is quite challenging to deal with. So yeah. So we're supposed to have a moon, just not this moon. No, I don't believe we ever had a moon here. No, it was placed here. So yeah, I mean, what do you need a moon for? You know, the Earth is a star. You got to remember that, right? So the Earth is an evolving star. It doesn't need a moon. It doesn't need any of that. It can happen. There is natural moons, but yeah. They did a lot of work in replacing energies a few years ago on the moon, but yes, I completely agree. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if that's coming from the updated KS work, because I know they talked about there being a Christic passage there, but I'm quite mindful of how I navigate the new work and what they say in the new work, if that's what you're referring to. Although I'm aware of that, yeah, there's a lot of things that have changed in the new work that are very different than the old stuff that are questionable. So I just observe it, you know. I'm not, again, if we're not creating God or devil and anything, then it doesn't really matter. We can individually experience and explore things in a curious manner, right? And if it's in a curious manner, then I feel that we're always going to find our way in a certain sense, and we'll have very clear discernment as well when we're exploring any body of work or knowledge. Just like everything I say, you know, it is what it is. It's not scripture. It's just, you know, I'm just sharing my experience, my perspective, my takes. So, you know, we can all see how that fits in our own path, and more importantly, focus on the practices that I'm pointing to, because the practices are really what's going to be able to give you all of the knowledge or whatever, you know, that's being looked at or looked for. Trying to scroll up, but okay. The Earth is a star. Yep. I mean, it's a part of Eartha, which is a star, and Earth. The entire solar system is the fragments of the fifth dimensional version of Earth, which is called Tara. Tara imploded, I think, in 560 million BC, and it fragmented into a bunch of pieces, which created our solar system, and it downstepped from density 2 in dimension 5 to density 1 in dimension 3, creating our solar system, which held 12 planets, 2 of which have been destroyed, Chiron and Maldak, and then we have an extra one that hasn't been found, which is Nibiru. So that's the solar system that we're existing in now. So Earth is hosted by Eartha, which is essentially our inner Earth, and what hosting means is that the energy of Earth is assisted by Eartha to be able to hold itself together, essentially. It's very complex, though, so I'm not going to get into all that. I'm just going back and seeing if I missed anything. Life is real, eternally. Okay. So I covered the moon. Yep, I think I got to everything. So yeah, if there's other questions, if you're just coming in, say hello. You can go back and rewatch all this. Where can we find these practices? Which one? Which one? I've talked about quite a few tonight. So you may want to rewatch this, go on my wall. But like I said, I'm going to be creating now a new course that's going to have all the meditations that I'm recommending. I'll make it really accessible for everyone. I mean, everything's accessible, but there'll be a lot of effort put into that. I mean, most of my meditations are on YouTube, so you can go there. And then if we're looking for freedom teaching work, the whole database is connected to the Patreon right now because it's just a lot to organize when I'm sending people specific stuff. It's a lot of time. So although it's not my work and I'm not charging for this database, I'm charging for the energy that goes into me navigating the guidance with some of these things. But a lot of it, I have it freely available, so send me a DM. However, if we're speaking to the practices I've talked about tonight, they're going to be spliced throughout here. There's a bunch of different things that we went into, and different little nuances. Remember, like, you can take one sentence that I give and just meditate on. That could be a practice. Like we went into last time. You know, if you go on an old post, which is the wheel, the shield of Kale, which has all the principles, all the core principles of being: love, compassion, kindness, dignity, respect, integrity, patience, blah, 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 all of them, all the virtues, the 12 virtues. You can meditate on each of them. Just the word patience you can meditate on. There's just the word love, compassion, you know, appreciation. You can meditate on each of these and spend a lot of time just focusing on what comes up for you in that. So much of the message here tonight has just been focusing on the simplicity that some of these practices may seem so uberly simple that your mind's like, oh, that can't do much, or, you know, but if we actually take some time with it, like when we say time, it's like not a couple days, and maybe like spend some weeks on it, you know, get a bit of consistency with those practices and really engage them. Boy, you're going to see, like, I mean, I don't know where each of you are at, but I can just imagine, you know, these practices really are going to be helpful for anyone if it's done in the correct individual timing, nuance, approach, intention, etc., etc. Flat Earth, well, you can go again. So, topic on psychedelics, topic on moon, topic on flat Earth. All of these were done in long form posts on my wall, so you can go and read that. The flat Earth one, I spent a good amount of time in to really make sure I was as clear as possible, because I know it's kind of like a trigger topic. I mean, all of these are actually trigger topics. It's probably why they're so popular. But I feel they're quite clear and concise, so you can probably go read that. Yeah, I mean, it summarizes everything I could say here. I mean, obviously I can expand on it if there's any specific questions on it. It's just, yeah, I mean, we live in a solar system that has rock-like shapes. So maybe they're not full globes, but they're rock-like shapes with an atmosphere that creates a spherical-looking thing. That's as focused as I'll get on the physical shape, because that's like the least important thing. You know, we have stargates, we have portals, we have ascension gateways to the entire time matrix. Right? We have lost histories of Lemuria and Atlantis. We have lost histories of the angelic humans from 575 million years ago. These topics are probably more important. We have dimensional layers of Earth, like inner Earth, you know, higher worlds of Aurora Earth and Eartha. You know, these are like floors in an apartment building, so that could be perceived as flat, but that's from a higher dimensional perspective. Right? If NASA takes a spaceship and goes all the way up, they're not going to get to Eartha. However, I know people, and I've seen things of people share, you know, having perceptions of cities in the skies, or seeing, you know, other worlds in the clouds and things like this. Well, that's a reality, because what's happening is they're tapping into a different frequency that changes the particle spin, and because we're all going through a change in our particle spin, we actually, it's almost like you could live on the same physical Earth but not see a whole group of people, because it's on a different frequency. So there is a reality to that, and it's covered in Freedom Teachings, and I cover that in the post as best as I can. Obviously there's much more that I can get into on that, but that's a good intro, unless you've already read it and you're asking for clarification. Long time ago in a star system far, far away. Well, that's what happened with Tara, but the other solar system is right here, right now, including Nibiru. Have you experienced these informations, like seeing dimensions, being conscious there, achieving expansion? Yeah, well, I've been to Inner Earth. I've been to other places that I don't necessarily remember the name or know the name. I just know they're just other worlds, and had intangible experiences there. But yeah, I've definitely had experiences in Eartha, and memories ongoingly are starting to be accessed. Sometimes the memory is not always a visual memory; it's a cognition. You can have a cognition of something where it's like you can't really put together the visuals yet. Maybe it's not fully clear, but there's a knowing, and it's as if you're seeing it, but you're not seeing it. If that makes sense. So that's been there, and especially in conversation with particular people who have had many more experiences than me that I consult with or speak to, and that's always fun, right? Because it's helpful. Yes, Mo Sawyer's topic on smoking weed. Nice. Hello. I see cloud castles in the sky and thought I was tripping while taking flights to the Caribbean. There you go. We got someone right in here. What is that about? Well, I just explained it, but if you want me to go deeper, I mean, you probably know more than me. You're the one who saw it. But it's it's just it's you tapping into those higher worlds, right? Inner worlds, higher worlds. It's like, again, floors in an apartment building. That's essentially what people may be tuning into as the flat Earth, from a higher dimensional perspective. So there is validity to it on some level. But if we're just going to sit around trying to argue that the actual physical Earth is flat, it's just a waste of time, in my opinion. But it is important to cover the other topics, and that's a lot of what the freedom teachings point to, and that's what I pointed to in that post. And we can just spend some time with ourselves, meditate, stop watching all these 10-hour YouTube documentaries or something like that. You know what I mean? Just really come into it ourselves and see what is actually useful right now. How and what is actually going to make a difference in our individual path of awakening and healing and integration and embodiment and peace, just living more peaceful and compassionately and lovingly and experiencing more joy and all the things. That's what I feel is most important, and that's the real reason that I'm pointing on these topics, is because it's like, okay, let's point to them and then bring it back. Let's focus it in. That simplifies a lot of the path, in my view. So, who is here? If you're coming in late, I'll just remind everyone that we've gone probably, an hour and a half. So there's quite a few topics that we've covered. This will be posted, and you can go on and rewatch it all. And then on top of that, I would recommend watching the previous lives if you haven't. Some of them have timestamps on YouTube, some of them don't. And they're 2-3 hours, so do as you like with that. I have been intending on doing individual videos like I used to, or maybe splicing, but I'd rather if someone else wants to do that. But for me, if doing individual videos doesn't come often, because I'm silent a lot of the time in the day, so when I come on these, I'll talk a lot because people are here and there's questions and there's movement. But if not, then or if I'm with some people, so we have some podcasts coming. I'm doing on Zoom. Instinctive, I felt it was a gateway, but again, I thought it was tripping, so I didn't dwell on it. That's good. It's good not to dwell on those things. They're just things to be appreciated and recognized. Higher dimensional perceptions, extrasensory perceptions are expanding, and that's always fun. It's like what I talked about in the forest. I'm often in the forest and I have memories of past lives, or I experience an Avatar movie where the forest is alive, or I feel the sound and the frequency and the light that's in the forest, and it's just such a beautiful thing. Everything is just so much more alive and joyful. And this is essentially what the higher worlds are like. It's not dark when you look up in the sky. It's light. It's vibrant. There is no darkness. It's colors and cities and worlds, and it's a perpetual movement of eternal light and love and awareness. And so that's what we can taste here. We can experience that here, and as you're all seeing and knowing, we're each doing that in our own way. Okay, maybe we'll take a moment just to come inside if you want. Just kind of rest in some silence here. Unless there's more questions, you can type them. Very nice way to end, I feel. Unless there's more questions. However, it doesn't matter how many words we use tonight, because the silence is still there, whether we're actually in silence or not. Well, there's more stuff coming in. So I would actually recommend, if you're in that silence and you're enjoying it, just stay in that. Just, bask in it. Like I said, you probably feel it the whole time throughout this, either way. But yeah. So I will comment, yo, my heart, third eye, and crown chakra are exploding. Thank you for energy. Authenticity is deeply felt and experienced. Thank you for taking me back to my breath in this moment. Oh, that's so nice. It's good to hear. How do you... Are you asking how do you know what my true intentions are? Like deep, authentic intentions. Oh, okay, yeah. So, and essentially, how do we be honest with ourselves? Well, I feel like when we use terms like deep, or completely and fully, and the absolutely complete finish of our internal journey, like this kind of wording. So you wrote it again, and it's clear, right? How do I know my authentic intention? I mean, anytime we're using adjectives, it can be difficult, because the mind, again, is looking for that perfection, right? So it's better to look at first, what is the practice? And the practice, in my view, is always the inner silence, coming to an inner silence, emptying out to see what remains. It's kind of like when we push things away in our life, or we're not desperate for things. So like in a relationship, if we're not desperate for a relationship, then whatever the relationship we're meant to experience or the one that's going to keep coming back, or the conversation we're going to have, it's going to keep coming to us. It's going to keep coming, and it'll naturally reveal itself in a very natural way. Just like if we try and avoid going to the bathroom, it'll keep telling us. The body will say, hey, you gotta go. So you can see how simple that is, in the sense of being authentic, is when we're silent, we can listen. We can hear. If we're coming with a bunch of ideas and expectations and teachings and dogmas and perspectives that we think are true or feel are absolutely true, or this or that, it's quite difficult to hear life, hear what's actually being spoken. Like, what is the body really saying right now? So, if we're practicing coming into that silence more often in any certain particular situation, like say we have a decision to make, or we want to contemplate, is this for us? Or, what do I want to say? How do I want to reply to this? What do I want to do today? And often, these are all kind of questions. So that's probably not the best way, because questions often can lead us to a lot of mental activity, but I'm using questions because that's just how our life is. If we're interacting and we have to go left or right, it's a natural question, but it's more so just an arising. So if we come into the place of listening in silence, firstly, the body will now become more online to speak. Because our mental bodies are quite damaged, that's why so many of the old spiritual teachings are all about destroying the mind. No mind, no mind. But it's more so a product of the balancing of the mind, so that the mind isn't taking over, and the mental faculties aren't the sole driver of action and movement. So if there's a authentic silence, like we're coming to the silence and then we're listening into that, and as we listen into that, it naturally guides. The body guides into a movement, it guides into a word, it guides into an intention. You can see here that it's a very natural process. It's not something like you have to take your shovel and you're digging for it and I gotta go and find it. I mean, it is a practice, so it's something that, again, it's a practice. So that's the journey of it. But essentially, there is no journey. That's why terms like deep and complete and all that is kind of illusionary, because we're already there. It's already here. It's already what's speaking. It's more so, is there actually a listening to it? And what is the vantage point that's being taken to listen. So if we're heavily identified and in fear with life, then we may ignore the body's movements, the natural feelings to engage in any particular thing, which is our authentic intention. We're essentially coming back to the intentionless intention, because we're coming back to the natural expression, which is not really an intention at all. So that's something to meditate on. So let me know if that makes sense, if that rests with you, if that gives a bit more peacefulness in regards to how we check in with ourselves, because that's all it is. It's you're checking in. You're coming in silence. You're like, oh, this is how I actually feel. I've gone my whole day and I've actually been feeling like this, And then when we can see our tendencies to escape, food, drugs, entertainment, sex, all the things that we try and, fill our time with, well, those are all driven by emotions, by energies. But if we come into silence, we can actually sit with that and see, well, what is actually at the core of that? What's at the surface? What's the foundation that's given rise to this need, this desire, this movement? And that usually gets pretty clear. Thank you. Okay, nice. I once had a dream. The classic image of the devil was called Ra. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that, if it makes sense to you. That's a pretty interesting dream and perspective, because the raw energy is, it's an interesting energy. It's what seems to be responsible for the channelings of what we call the Law of One, which are not the original Law of One. The Freedom Teachings are the Law of One, but this channelings of the Law of One, which are in a series of 4 books or 6 books, I believe, in the 1980s. It's pretty common in the New Age circuit. With other teachers who speak to it. I've used it. It does have some accuracy, but it's channeled by a being named Ra, which essentially is a collective consciousness at a certain level. But I have questioned many times and where that's from and what that's associated with. It does feel there's a lot of Anunnaki energy behind that. And it's similar actually with some other systems, inclusive actually of human design, which is, sometimes a surprise for some people, obviously, because I also share that. But it's all in balance with these things. We have to understand where we're at in this matrix. There's a lot of interwoven energies and agreements and councils and all this that's been happening here. It's quite complex. So again, if we're coming back to the knowing of who we are, we can navigate that from that place and that clarity. But that's a very interesting dream. I'm gonna sit with that one, because I've actually been pondering not the same thing, but the devil, whatever, but the being and the essence of Ra and what that is associated with, and some other things with it, because I've had personal experiences with this energy too in my early days. So yeah, cool. Thanks for bringing that up. My phone is gonna die soon, and I don't have my charger here, so I'm gonna get to as much as I can before. This is Mad Truth. Nice. Is there a need to balance the masculine and feminine energies within an individual, and if the practice is just silence? Yes, there is, and it will happen naturally from that practice, because there will be a guidance into other types of practices that will give different nuances and energies with that. However, it's done in a different way, I'd say, than a lot of what's presented, but not to diminish what all the other stuff that's out there, but we often see like the polarization of these two sides, when essentially it's a part of the whole. It's connected in the void, the Manu, the Ire, the Mane. It's all connected. So it does happen, yes, in different ways, and so there is a reality to that. However, it's like it's all kind of simultaneously being done as well. That's why when we come back to the silent practices, and some of the very simple, energetic, intentional techniques and methods, this can help with that. Yeah. Wow. Very profound dream. Yeah, that's very nice. Yeah, and that's exactly what I would recommend to do, and that's exactly what you're doing. So good on you. Okay, well, I'm going to close this up because I don't want this to delete itself if my phone ends up ending here. So I would like to save this. So I'm going to do that, and maybe we'll connect on maybe Wednesday night or something. I don't know, but send me a message in DM if you want access to those courses I mentioned. I mean, they're all there on my link on the bio, so you can go there. And if there's one-on-one time desired, then I'm starting to open up more. I have been doing less of that recently, but I'm doing a bit more of that as it feels natural. So you can send me a message on this, on any of the core topics, because we're covering a lot of different bases with those sessions that can be more specific. But nonetheless, this was nice. Yes, have a wonderful evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are. And Andrew, or whoever else asking questions, will get to it at a certain time. See you.